My name is Ayanda, daughter of old Makulu Temb, the midwife of Imagkomeni. I was there when it all happened, the season when the wind changed, and a boy named Sipho saved us from the flood. People think stories like this only happen in books or in the mouths of griots who sit under the marula tree spinning tales from shadows. But this happened here, in our village, and I carry the memory like a gourd filled with water, fragile, precious, always full. Sipho was just a goatherd then, not more than 12 or 13. You've seen boys like him, barefoot, skinny as a broom handle, with eyes too serious for their age. His hair was always dusty. His shirts hung off him like they belonged to an older brother who had long since left home. But there was something in his walk, in the way he tilted his head to the side as though listening to something no one else could hear. He belonged to the Dlamini family, who lived on the very edge of our village, where the thorn trees grew thick and twisted, and the air was heavy with the smell of cattle dung and wild sage. His mother had passed when he was very small, and his father, Maduna, was a quiet man, one of those types who could go a whole week without saying more than a sentence. They say madness ran in that family. The kind of madness that didn't make you shout or throw stones, but the kind that made you sit alone and smile at the sky, as if the clouds were whispering secrets. Every morning, Sipho would take his goats out beyond the banana groves, past the termite mounds and over the rocky hills where the soil turned red and the wind spoke louder. He never chased the goats or beat them like other boys. He just walked with them, humming to himself, and somehow, they followed. But what earned him the name Amfana Ayakuluma no Moya, the boy who speaks to the wind, was his strange habit of running after gusts of air. He would stretch out his arms like a bird and chase after the breeze, laughing, whispering, shouting. Then he would stop dead in his tracks, crouch down, and press his ear to the earth like he was listening to something stirring below. The other boys, Avusi, Themba, even little Kela, would laugh and throw stones. "Hey, wind boy," they'd shout. "Are you talking to your ghost friends again?" And Sipho never answered. He just dusted himself off and walked away. Now, I'm not saying I paid him much attention back then. We all have our own worries. I was 17, helping my grandmother with midwife duties and trying to ignore the whispers that I should start thinking about marriage. But I remember one afternoon clearly. We were sitting outside, Makulu Temb and I, shelling beans and watching the sky shift color before sunset. Sipho passed by with his goats, humming again, and Makulu Temb paused. She didn't look at him the way other people did. No suspicion. No pity. Just interest. "That boy," she said quietly, "he knows something. The wind speaks to him the way bees speak to the forest. The trouble is, people don't listen to the wind anymore." I asked her what she meant, and she gave me one of her half-smiles, the kind that told you she wouldn't explain even if you begged. That year, the dry season was strange. The sun still burned as it should, but the mornings were wetter than usual. Not rain, exactly, just thick mist clinging to the grass, seeping into our clothes, creeping into our bones. The frogs croaked long before sunset, loud and slow, deep from inside the drying puddles. The chickens refused to roost in their usual spots. The fig tree near the market bore fruit far too early. And the dogs barked at nothing for hours at night. Looking back, the land was warning us. But we were too distracted. You see, that was the year the local council promised to build a third road that would pass through Imagkomeni. There was excitement everywhere. People were arguing about whose land it would cut through, which houses might be demolished, and who would be hired for construction. The elders were holding endless meetings. The chief was busy polishing his reputation for the upcoming elections. No one had time for the wind. No one but Sipho. He came running into the market square one morning, barefoot, dusty, eyes wide and wild. I was there, helping Makulu Temb sell dried herbs and soapstone carvings. We saw him push through the crowd, straight to the bench where Baba Thwala and Baba Ndebili were playing drafts under the fig tree. "The river," he shouted. "It's rising. The wind says it's coming. The water will come soon, we must move." Silence followed. You could hear the wind whistling through the narrow spaces between the stalls. Then came the laughter. Baba Thwala wiped his nose, leaned back, and chuckled. "Oh, so now the river speaks too." Maybe next time it will ask for a calabash of amahu. Even the women selling maize roasted on coals laughed. One of them tossed a maize husk at Sipho's feet. The children pointed and giggled, but not everyone laughed. I looked at Makulu Temb. Her hands had gone still in her lap. Her eyes were fixed on the boy, not with mockery, but with something like recognition. Like she'd heard these words before, maybe in a dream or long ago in a story her own grandmother had told. Later, as we walked home, she whispered, "That boy may be young, but the wind does not choose the old over the young. It chooses who listens." That night, the wind changed. I remember it well. It wasn't like the usual night breeze that rustles the thatch and plays with the smoke from the hearth. This wind howled. It roared like a lion stuck between two hills. It rattled the tin roofs, slammed open doors, and carried dust into the cooking pots. Some say they heard voices in it. Not cries, not screams, just voices, calling names no one recognized. By dawn, Sipho was missing. His father hadn't seen him since the night before. The goats had returned on their own and were huddled nervously near the kraal, bleating low and restless. Sipho's blanket was still folded on the reed mat, untouched. His food sat cold in the pot. People assumed the boy had wandered off in the wind and gotten lost. Some shook their heads, muttering, "The madness has finally carried him away." Others, like Makulu Temb, said nothing but moved differently. She didn't eat that morning. She just packed her bag of herbs and water and tied her scarf tightly over her head like someone bracing for a storm. By mid-morning, the wind had dropped, but something in the air was wrong. Heavy. Even the birds kept low. The elders called a search. Men with spears and walking sticks fanned out toward the hills. I joined the women who took the lower river path. We were walking along the gravel bend near the mango trees when we heard it, a deep, distant roar like thunder rolling through rock. At first we thought it was a storm brewing in the mountains. But there was no lightning, no clouds. Then someone shouted, "The river! Look at the river!" We turned to see the Yumkomotsi, our river of life, transformed. It was no longer winding lazily through the valley as it always did. Now it surged, thick and brown, boiling with fury. It churned up branches and cattle bones, sending waves crashing against its own banks. We ran. Back in the village, people were already shouting. Panic had taken root. Elders waved their walking sticks, yelling for the young men to gather the children and head for higher ground. Mothers strapped babies to their backs while balancing baskets of food on their heads. Some tried to gather possessions. Others simply grabbed what they could and ran. And still, the water came. Not in slow trickles or teasing pools, but in waves. Walls of it. It crushed fences, snapped trees, and dragged away everything too stubborn to move. Mkulu Beki's cassava fields vanished. The chicken coops floated like forgotten boats. The footbridge by the schoolyard, built by our own hands with stones and wire, cracked apart like dry biscuit in tea. But listen closely, this is the miracle. No one died. Not a single child was swept away. Not a single elder was lost in the waters. Even the goats and chickens, somehow, made it uphill. Why? Because of Sipho. Even though they had laughed, a few people, just a few, had remembered his words. Makulu Temb, for one, had quietly told the neighbors closest to her to pack light and sleep higher up for the night. And in villages like ours, news spreads faster than the chief's cattle when the kraal gate swings open. Some listened, some didn't believe, but thought, what harm is there in spending a night on the hill? And so the ones who mocked him still had him. And the ones who had him, they lived. When the flood calmed, we began searching for Sipho again. We found him 2 days later, up on Lovu Hill, the tallest rise overlooking the river valley. He was sitting beneath a boulder, goats grazing quietly nearby, as if nothing had happened. His shirt was torn. His legs scratched. His eyes tired. But he was alive. He looked up as we climbed the hill. I remember how quiet he was, not proud, not bitter, not afraid. Just quiet. Like someone who had done what needed doing and didn't need applause. I asked him how he knew. He looked at me, eyes dark and soft like storm clouds, then said, "The ground throbbed like a drum the night before. The wind was confused, changing directions too fast. and the birds flew the wrong way. That's when I knew the river would not stay still. That was all. From that day, no one called him mad again. Years passed. Sipho no longer herded goats. The chief, realizing the boy had saved his own compound from being lost, made arrangements. Word reached the municipality. They sent surveyors and scientists. When they met Sipho and heard his account of signs in the earth and air, they didn't laugh. They asked questions. They took notes. A woman from Pretoria, an environmental researcher, visited twice. She brought books. She talked about microclimates and early flood detection. Then she did something no one expected. She offered Sipho a scholarship. The boy from the thorn tree edge, the wind chaser, the strange child once pelted with maize husks, went to study meteorology. He still comes back every year during the rainy season. When he arrives, he doesn't wear suits or carry gadgets. He wears sandals. He walks the hills like he used to. He visits Maduna's old house, though his father is long gone now. And then he climbs Ndlovu Hill and just sits there, listening. The children now gather around him, not to mock, but to learn. And us, we listen to the wind now. When the air shifts and the trees lean in new directions, we pause. When the birds take flight too early or the frogs croak in dry earth, we remember. Because sometimes the earth speaks, sometimes the wind sings. And sometimes, just sometimes, a quiet boy is the only one who hears. Make sure to like the video and subscribe as the stories are just about to get better.